Yo, fellow Hardliners. The time has come and Battlefield Hardline has officially been released in many places. There is still a few days before the game is officially released in Europe, but most people have now got their hands on the game. I've already played it for a number of hours on PC, as well as around 10 hours on the Xbox One version, so I have a pretty good handle on how the game plays. But before we get into the multiplayer aspect, I wanted to start by talking about the single player campaign. I know a lot of you don't really care much for the single player aspect of the game, but I wanted to cover all the bases for someone potentially wanting to buy the game. The single player campaign has you playing as a cop called Nick Mendoza, while a drug war is engulfing his city of Miami. The story itself is actually okay. It plays out like a TV show, and there are some features that are pretty neat to go along with that. For instance, when you close down the single player, it shows you a quick coming next on Hardline video which shows clips from upcoming cutscenes, and it does the same when you load the campaign back up as well, with a previously on Hardline segment. The characters are a lot better than previous games, and you actually feel a lot closer to them, and they're expressed a lot more, and you find out a lot more information about them. To be honest, it's not really hard to be better than the characters in Battlefield 4, but they do a lot better job making you feel like you want the characters to do well, you want them to live. So the story is okay, and the characters are cool, and it has some neat little features, but how does it play? Well, in my honest opinion, not that well. There are lots of problems with the single player. Where to start? Firstly, in the very first real mission, you're in a car chase, which in itself would be fine if it wasn't for the fact that the car you were chasing did not have utterly ridiculous physics that made it look like it was skating along the road in front of you. How that has made it into the final version, I don't know. Also, when you're in transition into pre-rendered cutscenes, or even such segments as when you're just opening a door, the game abruptly drops down from whatever FPS you're running it at to 30 FPS to run to the cutscene. What this means is that quite often you'll go from really smooth gameplay and then you'll go abruptly to 30 FPS for one of the cutscenes, which makes the game look really choppy. Then when this little cutscene of you getting out of a car finishes, you're instantly back up to 100 on FPS and the game runs smooth again. And it really makes the game look choppy at times when it's entering cutscenes. In most situations in the game, you're attacking a base or a building or a plant or something like that, and you can use a tool at your disposal, which is your scanner. You can use this to identify suspects and alarms and plan your way in, kind of like you would maybe in Far Cry. It all pretty much goes the same way though. You walk right in front of an enemy that never sees you somehow, you arrest him, because that is a mechanic that you are allowed to use, and repeat basically until they're all down. So this mechanic that allows you to arrest people is fairly simple. It allows you to walk up to somebody, flash your badge at an enemy, and they'll drop their gun, allowing you to arrest them quietly. This in itself is okay, but you can do it unlimited times. How this guy carries around so many handcuffs is beyond me. He must be an absolute beast. I mean, not only can you carry around unlimited handcuffs, but you can do it with up to 3 enemies at the same time. And most of them won't even challenge you. They'll just accept it, drop their guns, and they won't even try to fight. And it kind of makes some parts of the game exceptionally easy. So I was a little bit disappointed with that. You could even be arresting someone within earshot of another enemy, and he won't even bat an eyelid. The AI in general, in fact, is very poor. I also have a massive hatred for missions in a game that make you chase someone that you can never catch up to. Or if you just don't move, they never actually advance and they're always just in the next section. It just highlights how dumbed down the campaign actually is. It just feels like you are never actually in control and you're just along for the TV show with a cool story. So, that's my thoughts on the single player. But what about the multiplayer, the parts that everyone wants to know about? Well, it's awesome. Myself, personally, I've had a lot of fun playing it. There are some really, really good close quarters infantry maps, and then there's a few bigger open maps for vehicle play, so there is a good balance in that respect. The block is a good example of an infantry map, but there is also some much needed balance, especially with this map, because it is really easy to base cap the enemy team when playing as criminals on Conquest. Riptide is also a very large map, with Dust Bowl and Derail being very good at hotwire. From the beta, the assault rifles have slightly more recoil than they did, and the shotguns took a bit of a nerf in terms of their damage over distance, which was definitely a good thing. Also, the criminals now have the M416 instead of the cops, who have the G36 to replace it. The gunplay feels sharp just like it did in the beta, although there is a lack of a network smoothing factor for some reason. I'm not quite sure if that's because this is an oversight or if it's been left out for some particular reason. Whether that means there is no network smoothing in the game, or whether we just can't change it from its default value, I don't know. It seems like an odd omission considering it's been in Battlefield 4 for so long. Most of the latest CTE changes, in fact, to Battlefield 4 have also not made it into the game's release. Universal Soldier Aiming is but one example of this, but I'm sure they will make it in at a later date. Destruction is present, but it is mostly smaller micro-destruction, except for some larger Levolution events on some of the maps. Downtown, of course, has the crane that topples over, destroying the side of one of the high-rise buildings, whereas maps such as Riptide have a passive storm that takes over the map. Not all maps, though, have you been able to destroy some structures that you would think you'd be able to. You might be able to destroy a building on one map, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to destroy a similar building on another, so just bear that in mind. In terms of performance, the game runs well, but I would expect it to on an i7 and a 970, which is what I'm running it on. And to be honest, if you can run Battlefield 4, you should expect similar performance with it being mostly an unchanged engine. Touching quickly on premium as well, it is important to note that some of the premium features are not in the game at launch. The gun bench, for example, that would allow you to make a custom camo for your gun, is a premium feature that is listed, but there is currently no ETA on when that will arrive in the game, so I'll keep you updated on when that is likely to drop. Overall, the game is very good. I love the multiplayer of Hardline, I really do. It's just like a little action movie. There are so many things going off. There are so many explosions happening. It's very fast paced, which is what I enjoy, and it's much more of akin to Battlefield 3 than Battlefield 4, definitely. There's probably plenty of things in this video that I haven't touched upon, but I just wanted a video where I can just express some of my thoughts. There's plenty of time to go over some of the things that I haven't covered. As I said earlier, the single player for me is something I'm never going to go back to. It's a bit of a letdown, if I'm honest. It made me feel extremely stupid because it was so dumbed down. But I don't buy Battlefield for the single player. I never have. I buy it for the multiplayer because that's what's going to keep my attention. And Battlefield Hardline is definitely going to keep my attention. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I will see you next time.